Happy Halloween, Jessie Cats! I hope you're all having an awesome day and that you're not eating too much candy, but then again, it is a study party, so oh well. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel and you're new, then welcome to the Jessie Cat family. So I post up weekly study tip videos and I also have study parties because we just want to make studying as much fun as possible. So if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel and also leave me a comment below telling me something about you because I really want to get to know all of my amazing Jessie Cats a whole lot better, and I'll try and respond to as many of your comments as I possibly can. Last week I filmed a couple of different Halloween themed videos for you guys. They weren't really study related, but I felt like getting creative and I felt like getting into the Halloween festivities. So I did two different videos. The first one includes 3 really yummy, terrifying treats for Halloween, as well as a really easy DIY Halloween costume. And the other one is a DIY pumpkin spice EOS lip balm, and it's also got a giveaway if you want to win EOS lip balms as well. So I'm going to leave the links to those videos below. Definitely go check them out because they were so much fun to film and I think you're going to really love them. Anyways, I have got a bunch of your questions that you've been writing in all about studying, and I'm going to try and answer as many as I possibly can. So I hope that it helps you out with your studies, and without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so I've got all your questions on my phone, and the first question is, how many days before a test should you begin studying? So the way that I like to space out my studying for an exam or test is to start preparing roughly 3 weeks before. But saying that, I would suggest that you're actually preparing for your exams throughout the year, making your weekly summaries and making sure that you're reviewing your notes after class every single time that you go to a lecture or to class, just so that the information can consolidate better in your memory and you're going to remember it better as well down the track when you're not having to stress and cram for it at the very last minute. So yeah, I'd probably suggest that you start preparing 3 weeks before, but that sort of preparation is your solid exam preparation, and it just means that you have enough time to review and revise all the information without feeling stressed. Okay, the second question is, how do you study for 2 tests that are on the same day? So guys, I've been there. I've actually had 3 tests on the same day and it was really stressful. It was not fun, but I really hope that these tips are going to help you out if you happen to have multiple tests or exams on the same day. So I've actually got a few points here because I don't want to forget them. The first one is that it's all about time management. So if you've got several tests that you need to be studying for, it's really important that you set aside time for each one and that you're not neglecting one subject compared to the other because they're on the same day. So I wouldn't suggest that you allocate a whole week for one subject and then assume that you're going to have enough time to study the second subject the following week. Try and allocate a morning for one and the afternoon for another so that you're, I guess, alternating between the 2 subjects each day. The other thing is though that if you find one subject to be a lot more challenging than another and you find that you've actually learnt a lot of the material for one compared to the other, then you really need to prioritize and make sure that you're actually focusing more on certain information that you don't know very well, because at the end of the day, it's really important that you feel confident that you know all the different elements that could be on the exam. And then the other tip that's really helpful if you have multiple exams on the same day is to actually make yourself cheat sheets. And the great thing about cheat sheets, and I think I mentioned this in a couple episodes before, is that you really are able to just revise the main information and just the really important points and diagrams and definitions really easily because you've got all that information organized really clearly on just one piece of paper. You've highlighted the key terms and definitions and diagrams, and all those illustrations are just going to make that information stand out on the page. So what I like to do actually is I will look over my cheat sheet right before an exam, because if you've got several tests on the one day, you won't have time to revise all of your notes on that day before that test. So if you've got a cheat sheet, then you can at least justify putting aside 10 minutes before each exam just to focus on a little bit of a refresher of what might be on the exam. Alright, question 3 is, what's the best way to start your study sessions? So I have a couple of tips here. The first thing I like to do is actually get out a to-do list and write everything down, and that way I'm setting myself some short-term goals and I'm staying organized. I'm giving myself some direction and I know exactly what I need to do, which is going to help me be more productive and stay on task when I'm studying. The other thing I recommend is actually to study for no more than 30 minutes at a time. So when you're starting a study session, get out your timer or your phone and actually use that so that you can set yourself up to study in 30-minute minute blocks. And there's actually quite a few different timer apps as well if you want to check them out on the App Store. Just type in different study timer apps and they come up, and it's just a really easy way to, organize your study sessions. And then the other thing I recommend when you're starting your study sessions is to make sure that you have everything that you need to study for that subject. So I don't mean that you have every little thing possible that you could think of, from water and food and a jumper and a heater and your blanket and your books and everything. Just the main stuff that you're going to need, such as your homework handouts, your folder, your textbook, and some stationery. Because you need to make sure that you're prepared and that you're not going to start studying and then 5 minutes in realize you don't have everything, and that's just going to give you a reason to get up and procrastinate, and that's not good. Question 4 is, how do you overcome nerves before a big test? So I have to admit that when I used to have really big exams and tests in the past, I'm pretty prone to feeling quite anxious or stressed. So I have a few tips that I tend to use, and they work really well for me. So the first thing is that I actually like to get away from everyone, because a lot of the time when everyone's just stressing, it's going to make you feel more stressed and anxious. So find somewhere quiet to sit, plug in some earphones, listen to something relaxing and calming. I like to focus on my breathing, so exhaling to the count of 6 and inhaling to the count of 4. So when you lengthen your exhalations to be longer than your inhalations, you're actually turning on your parasympathetic nervous system, and that's going to help you to calm down. The other thing I like to do is have a bottle of water with me and just take a little sip of water as I do my counting, and it also just really helps me to calm down and feel more grounded. And then the other thing I like to do is, I think this is actually something I showed you in one of my first episodes I ever filmed on my channel, but I'll write myself down some positive affirmations on some palm cards, and I will leave that in my pocket so I can read over them down the track. So if I find that I'm feeling anxious and it's 5 minutes before the exam, or it's 30 minutes before the exam, whatever it is, I'll pull out these cards and I usually start them with the word I. So I know that I have studied to the best of my ability, or I have done well on exams before, or I know that I am confident, or I know that I have studied and I'm going to do well. All those sort of positive affirmations to help to make you feel better and boost your confidence. And that's really going to help to drop your anxiety and your stress levels as well. So they would be my tips for reducing anxiety when you have a class test or a major exam. Okay, so question 5 is, what do you do if your friends always want to copy your work? So I find this to be really annoying sometimes when you have these friends that don't do any work themselves, and then they ask you if you can just show them your work and they'll copy it down. So the first thing is that they're not going to actually learn anything if they copy your work. And the second thing is that it can be quite annoying because you might feel like they're just using you. And so I would suggest one of two things. First of all, you can confront them and just let them know openly and honestly that you just don't want to give them your work because you worked really hard on it. Or the second thing you might want to do, if you don't want to get into any trouble with them because you're a bit worried about what they might say or how they might respond, is just to tell them that you forgot your homework, or that you left it in your locker and that you'll try and find it later for them, but that you're in a rush to get to your class, because hopefully they'll just find someone else on the way and copy their work instead. But yeah, it's never fun when people just ask to copy your work because you worked really hard for it. Question 6 is it better to study for an exam from your class notes or your textbook? So I think it's really important that you do study both. However, from past experience, I've learned that my teachers tend to have majority of the questions on an exam coming from our class notes because that's what they've emphasized in class. However, I do find that it's really helpful whenever I read over my textbook because it just reinforces all of that information. And then if you have any multi-choice questions where they're just going to ask you teeny tiny facts that you might have missed and not paid much attention to, they usually are what come from your textbook. So yeah, I think it's important to study both, but if you don't have that much time to study for a test, then I would focus on studying your class notes first before you then head over and read from your textbook. Question 7 is, how do you balance schoolwork with other commitments like playing sport? So I don't know if you guys know this, but I used to dance about 20 hours a week, and so I found it also a bit of a challenge to balance my dancing with my schoolwork. So I have a couple of tips for you guys, but I guess overall what I really want you to get out of this is that it's really important not to overload yourself and just be realistic. So are you going to be playing soccer 2 times a week, or are you actually going to be playing 6 times a week and it's going to influence your grades and you're not going to do very well at school? So definitely have a think about that. But something that I used to do was I would spend all of my free periods really trying to get my work done, and I'd also usually use part of my lunch breaks to meet with my teachers and make sure that I was covering all the information so that I didn't have to revise that much when I went home. The other thing that can be really helpful is to revise your class notes right after class as opposed to at the end of the week, because that way it's going to be fresh in your mind, you're going to be better at remembering it, and you're probably not going to have to revise it as much. So I guess that's a really good way to budget your time and just not have to spend as much time studying. But yeah, just make sure that you're not overloading yourself, and if you do need a lot more help, then definitely speak to your teachers, chat to your parents, and see if there's any other way to work around it, because usually teachers can be really helpful and they'll understand if you have other commitments that, you know, maybe you do need an extension just a one-off, but they're not usually forgiving if it's going to be a regularly occurring thing. So yeah, just be kind to yourself, guys, and yeah, try and prioritize schoolwork first, because at the end of the day, when you finish school, that's when you can do whatever you want, but you only get one shot at school. Okay, question 8 is, what's the best way to study a big text? So the way that I like to study a big text is to skim through the readings first, just getting a good outline of what the information's about, but actually also have in my mind what I'm trying to get out of the text. So am I studying this for a multi-choice exam, and in that case I'm looking for key dates, definitions, names and facts? Or is it something like an essay that I plan to be writing, and so in that case you're just kind of looking for the outline of the text and maybe any important findings from research. The other thing I like to do is then go through the readings again, and this time look at it more closely and highlight keywords so that you're actually really processing the information and actively learning it. And the other thing you can do, if it's a big text that happens to also be made into a movie, whether you're studying Shakespeare, maybe Macbeth in year 9, I think I studied that in year 9, then it can be great to also look for summaries online and also grab the movie and watch it. And the other great thing about learning a big text is that it's a great idea to actually talk about it with all of your friends and actively study the text. Make it fun, make it engaging, share your ideas and thoughts. Once you make the information more meaningful, it's going to stick into your mind and it's going to be a lot easier to remember. Question 9 is, how do you organize last year's notes? So something that I really like to do, apart from storing them somewhere safe, such as in a folder and then in your cupboard, is if you have a lot of notes and you've spent a lot of time on them, making them incredible because you've been a really diligent student throughout the year, I actually like to take them, get them printed off and bound into a book, and then I'll keep it on my shelf, because that way, whenever I've actually got something that I might be studying down the track that relates to what I learnt last year, I can just pull out that book. It's all organized, I've put in chapter topics, and it's just a really good resource that you're actually able to access besides your textbooks and class notes and the internet. Alright, question 10, the last question for today, is where is the best place to study? So I recommend studying somewhere that is quiet and free from distractions, whether it's a library or in your study or in your room, just making sure that you're not going to be interrupted during your study sessions. If you don't actually have your own desk at home and your room might be a bit small, then you could do one of two things. Firstly, you could actually go to your local library, and that's a really good way to separate your work time from your playtime. The other thing you can do, and my mum did this as a kid, is she got a little fold-out table, and so every time that she would go and study, she'd just pull out this table, open it up in her room, and then just do her homework on that. So yeah, if you're a little bit short for space, then you can always invest in a little trestle table. Otherwise, to use your school library or your local library is another great idea. I think at the end of the day, it's just somewhere where you're not going to be distracted, where it's well lit, it's warm enough, it has everything that you need. It's not a great idea to study in bed because firstly, it's not very good for your posture, and secondly, your mind actually associates your bed with falling asleep, so you'll probably end up taking a nap instead of studying. Alright, Jessicats, that is all for my October Halloween themed study party. I hope you all loved the tips and that it really helped you out with your studies. And remember to check out my other 2 videos below, and you can also win your own EOS lip balm, which I'm obsessed with. I actually showed it on my monthly favorites video as well. So yeah, be sure to check out those videos, and if you're not already subscribed, then click that subscribe button, guys. Leave me a comment below with any of your study questions. I'll try and answer them as much as I possibly can. You guys have been awesome with sending in all of your questions. It really shows that you take your studies really seriously. And that actually reminds me that I have my online study skill sessions for seated educationary available now. So click on the link below in the description box and sign up to be a seated member. You will gain free exclusive access to this series, and it's all about tackling your major assignments and projects. And I do have something special for all of you guys as well, so definitely check it out if you haven't already. Alright, I'll see you guys next week. Bye!